We're in the Endgame now. Oh, I got him. I did it. I rewatched the entire of the MCU, every single fucking movie leading up to this. 11 years, 22 movies. And we are finally here in the Endgame now. Okay, what's going on YouTube? Sean here, and yes, that's right, I did see Avengers Endgame, and I did attempt to record this yesterday, but my phone ran out of memory space, like, in the middle of recording, and I thought I was doing so well in that video, like, everything was coming together, and then I just ran out of space. I'm like, son of a bitch, and I couldn't bring myself to talk about it again right after that. I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna let a little bit more time pass to really let the movie settle on me so I could think about it and get my points across for this one. So yes, Avengers Endgame has finally come. I looked at the box office. The movie made $156 million opening day, although I do find that number to be, a bit off considering the fact that they included Thursday night previews, and there was a lot of screenings going on Thursday. I don't really feel like that's fair to add Thursday previews to weekend box office. I mean, sure, you could have done that back in the midnight showing days, but with Thursday previews, I'm like, that's Thursday. I don't really feel like you should count that towards Friday grosses when it's opening on a Thursday. But regardless, the movie's going to make a shit ton of money. It's going to be the first film ever to make $300 million opening weekend. It is going to be out of this world insane. Assuming there's not a huge drop-off on Saturday and Sunday. It's kind of like how it was when Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 opened up. That movie had like a huge, gigantic-ass opening day, then it just dropped off like a rock on Saturday and Sunday because it was the end of the whole, franchise and so on and so forth. But yeah, that movie had a huge opening. This movie's just going to just blow things out the water. But yes, so Avengers Endgame, I posted a video the other day where I just talked about the movie. I couldn't really, talk about it. I really had to let my thoughts settle on this one because when I came out of the theater for Avengers Endgame, I had a very weird, strange feeling. Like, I didn't really know how to describe it. It was kind of like, I didn't leave the theater all giddy and excited and, like, blown away or anything like that, thinking that was, like, an amazing masterpiece or anything. I felt weird. Like, it's kind of like when you watch a TV show, you get kind of sad and emotional towards, like, the ending of it, but this one felt different. And it's like, yeah, it ended, and yeah, there's a lot of emotional payoff for a lot of the stuff, but I didn't feel that real giddiness or excitement that I just watched like the greatest thing in the world per se. And that's kind of where I am at with Avengers Endgame. It's not my favorite MCU film. I don't think it's this pitch perfect send-off that the MCU for like the original Avengers, especially with how some of them are handled. Some of them get great send-offs. Iron Man gets a terrific send-off. Captain America's send-off is good, although some of it's just kind of confusing. I'll have to get into spoilers later on, but I'll start my spoiler-free. But then again, everyone's pretty much seen it at this point by now. Some people have not Friday than today, because this movie's making so much money. I feel like everybody's just going to see it opening weekend. And we'll see how it does like in the coming weeks. But yeah, so Avengers Endgame, I prefer Infinity War a lot more than this one, actually. I felt like the villain was a lot stronger. I felt like Infinity War had more focus. It did a better job balancing its tones. Because there's times in Endgame where it tries to go really funny, and it just comes across as really awkward. The pacing early on in the film is a huge drag for me personally, and I understand its purpose there. They're trying to emphasize the despair of Thanos snapping his fingers, and I get that. I just think it could have just gone on a little bit quicker, because that first hour of the movie, I was just sitting there like, oh my God, can we just kind of get on with this plot a little bit? Let's move along a little bit. This pace is really, really, really dragging. And understand, they're trying to make it seem as depressing and as slow as possible so you can get the big payoff. It's kind of it's a Spielberg trick. Although I felt like Spielberg, for the most part, like with Jaws, even when the shark's not on screen, I'm still entirely fascinated by what's going on. But this one, it's just like, okay, I get it. Let's just move on a little bit. But I understand its purpose and place within the movie. So the first hour, it's kind of like how I feel when I watch The Dark Knight Rises. Because when it comes to The Dark Knight Rises, I love the opening prologue with Bane. But as soon as that's done, I have to wait like 45 minutes for Batman to wake back up and put the suit back on again. And I'm just kind of like, oh, God, this is just, I know where they're going to get to. I'll just typically just skip it. And that's probably where I'll be when I go and eventually see this movie again. I don't think I'm going to go see it in theaters again. I think once is good enough for me for right now. It's not like I was when I saw Infinity War. When I left the theater, I'm like, I gotta go see that again instantly. Just seeing the audience reaction and everything to it, I was like, oh my god, this is just outstanding. Everything was just delivering in that one. This one, there's a lot that does deliver. Like, there's some awesome moments in this movie. But I feel more mixed towards Endgame. Mixed to positive, mind you. So I'm not really entirely hating on this film, but I'm not entirely loving it either. There's some awesome things in there, but there's just some things that just kind of irked me the wrong way. Particularly with how some of the characters are. For instance, Thanos in Infinity War, I love. I think all-time great villain right there. Thanos in Endgame, he's a huge step down, and his presence is just not really felt per se. Like, because Infinity War was more of Thanos' story. That's what made it so interesting, was like the whole perspective was mainly from the villain. But in this movie, he's really restrained a bit. He's nowhere near as intimidating, especially after what happens in the first act. And I'm just like, oh, wow, that's really it? The biggest villain of all time is just like kind of, I guess I'll get into spoilers doing that, just kind of pushed to the side a bit. Yeah, I didn't really like that. I don't really care too much for Thanos in this movie, which is such a shock because he was the one I was most excited to see, like how he was going to follow up in terms of Avengers Endgame. But no, it's the first hour, it's like sitting through a funeral. It's really sad, it's really depressing, and it's like full of despair. But it does a good job humanizing a lot of the Avengers. You see Black Widow, see the toll this takes on her. You see how Scott Lang factors in. You see how Captain America factors in. People are just trying to move on, but they can't necessarily do that. So, yeah, I mean, the first hour, I understand its purpose, but it really just drags a bit too long for me, and it takes a while for this movie's plot to really get going of how they're going to try and undo the whole snap altogether. And then it goes into some weird time travel stuff. And the rules of time travel in general in movies is just confusing as hell. I think Back to the Future presented its form of time travel quite well, and you understand where it was coming from. But this one, it just, in general, some of it I understand, but then some of it, when you try to think about it, doesn't really make too much sense to me. It just gets super confusing in terms of the time travel. So we'll explain that in terms of the spoilers. Some things that just kind of irk me the wrong way that I don't really get. The ending climax is really exciting, and it has a great payoff to everything. Like, there's some really satisfying moments within it. And it does tug at the heartstrings a bit. You do get emotional at the end of the film, knowing like, okay, this is the end of the story for a lot of these characters. And it's a good kind of like passing the torch to the next generation type feel. Much better than a lot of other movies do, per se. But yeah, so overall thoughts before I get into major spoilers. Is Endgame a great movie? I don't think it's a great movie. I think it's mixed to positive. So I'm going to say check it out. Because, I mean, if you're within it this long, you might as well finish the journey. And honestly, after this one, I don't really feel the need for there to be any more Marvel movies in the MCU for quite a little while. I feel like at this point, the universe should just take a couple-year break. We've been going nonstop for 11 years at this point, and there comes a time where it's just like, okay, guys, we've got all this. You've told your story. I don't know how they're going to really top this whole Infinity Saga. I guess you could bring in the X-Men in that, but I think people are kind of burnt out on the X-Men. I am personally burnt out on the X-Men movies. I know they got Dark Phoenix and New Mutants. I'm just like, okay, no more X-Men. Just let them rest. I feel like this franchise here, the MCU, just needs to rest for a while. I know they got Spider-Man Homecoming. I know they got like a Black Widow movie coming out, Eternals, Black Panther 2, Doctor Strange 2, all those other films, but Guardians 3, I just think we need a little bit of a breather from the MCU after this one, because it had this huge epic journey, and it came to an appropriate climax in terms of the Infinity Saga. I feel like the final bit is fantastic, but it takes a lot to get there, and some of it gets kind of a bit messy in the middle and the first act. But the third act is just like, wow, it kind of reminded me a bit of Rogue One, a Star Wars story, where it's like early on in the film, it's a real drag, but then you get to that third act and it's so awesome, and then you leave the theater on that like epic high. That's kind of where I'm at with Avengers Endgame, although Endgame is more sad and kind of emotional with how the journey ends. Because I put myself in the perspective of somebody who just sat through this entire journey. I've been there since the beginning. I was in the theater for the original Iron Man. And just to see this whole universe be built up and like conclude at this point, I'm like, okay, that was good. That was a great journey for Tony Stark. Not everything worked per se. I mean, Iron Man 3, anyone? That was really bad. Or You had some other mediocre films like Iron Man 2, Thor: The Dark World, Captain Marvel, and all that. But I feel like there is a satisfying conclusion for some of the characters. Not all of them, per se. I don't know if anyone else's, some of these characters are going to continue moving forward, but we shall see. So now that I've gotten that shit out of the way, let's go into full spoilers. Starting with the first act, then we'll get to the second act, and then the third act conclusion. So the first act, it's after the snap. Iron Man just really sad and depressed after what happened. He's just a physical wreck. And I was really digging that bit. Like, you see Hawkeye and you see his family die. It's just a really sad moment. And then they head back to Earth. Iron Man is just completely, like, burnt out, destroyed. He's, like, sick and all that from dehydration. He was working with Nebula. Then Captain Marvel shows up just completely out of nowhere in the middle of space, brings him back home. Pepper Potts is still alive, which is cool. The snap happens. The team decides, okay, they're going to go get that son of a bitch. They're going to go kill Thanos. They're going to undo this whole thing. So they go to Thanos' planet, which is on like this garden. And you find Thanos. He's really scarred and bruised up. And they go looking for the gauntlet. And then Thanos is just like, I destroyed the stones and it nearly killed me. And then Thor cuts his head off. And there goes the most powerful villain in the MCU. Thanos goes out pathetically, I feel like, in the first act. Obviously, I understand that he's going to come back later on in the movie as, you know, the badass Thanos. It's just that after he does the snap, it just doesn't... After Thanos dies early on in the film, I felt like right there, I'm like, oh, well, what are they going to do in this aspect? When you just killed your biggest villain, kind of rather... I would have rather them saved, like, Thanos dying earlier. Instead of dying early on, I would rather save him dying. He dies twice in the movie. But just seeing the villain who just single-handedly took down the whole entire Avengers team just get wiped out within like the first 30 minutes of the next film, I don't know, it just kind of irked me the wrong way. But I understand what they were doing. They were going to do the 5-year time jump, and then Ant-Man, by some sheer lucky coincidence, a rat just happens to be inside his van, just pushes a button, and then that sends him out. Then he comes back to realize that he's 5 years into the future, and he sees that like everyone's dead. He sees his whole family's pretty much gone, except for his daughter Cassie, who's all grown up. We see how the characters have changed over time. Black Widow is just really miserable. Captain America is trying to look on the bright side of the life. There's some of the Avengers are kind of together. Who's ever left over is just kind of doing stuff. Nebula's on their side. Rocket Raccoon's on their side. Thor, the whole... Okay, let's talk about the Hulk first. I didn't really care too much for Bruce Banner / Hulk kind of merged. I mean, I guess he finally found his inner peace, but just seeing Hulk like this with glasses and a t-shirt talking in that Ruffalo voice, I watched it. I was just sitting back kind of terrified by what I was seeing. I'm like, it just didn't feel right to me. I feel like the Hulk he was probably one of the weakest aspects of Infinity War, just seeing the Hulk turn into, I guess, a little bitch. That's the only way they really pussified the Hulk in Infinity War, and even doing so in Endgame, because the Hulk doesn't really do any smashing. I'm like, what is the Hulk doing? He's like pretty much doing nothing altogether in this film. And that disappointed me because Hulk, honestly, Ruffalo, I felt like his character in general, like post-Avengers, like once we get to like Avengers Age of Ultron, like after that, I feel like the Hulk has kind of become the brunt of a joke. Because Ruffalo in the first Avengers is great. There's this unhinged nature to him. You never know what he's going to do next. And he was one of the highlights of that movie, but I feel like the Hulk in general just became the brunt of a bunch of jokes. And I don't really like that. I felt like I like the Hulk. I like that Jekyll and Hyde aspect of Hulk, where it's just like he's kind of losing control and he's not. I don't know. I just didn't like the direction that they went with in the Hulk. And if this is his send-off, I'm like, this is kind of weak. I don't really like what they're doing with Hulk in this one. In terms of other things, Thor, at first it was funny to see what they did with Thor. But man, after all the character work, all the brilliant character work they were doing with Thor about how he's got to like, okay, just to see a lot of it undone really pissed me off in a way. For instance, Thor, you see what he goes through in Ragnarok, where it's just like, okay, the Mjolnir is just meant as a way to like harness the power. He's got it inside himself. Then he needs a weapon to kill Thanos. And then Thor turns into this pathetic, drunk, fat, out of shape, Big Lebowski-looking dude who doesn't accept responsibility for his people, so they completely threw that out the way. I like the way where Thor was going in Infinity War. I think that's the most I've enjoyed Thor in this whole entire universe, was just kind of like how he goes from Ragnarok to Infinity War, where he's just like on a mission to kill Thanos. But Thor just becomes the brunt of a bunch of jokes. Like, hey, it's funny because he's fat and out of shape. Yeah, sure, it's funny at first, but then afterwards I'm just like, okay, this is Thor, people. Like, he should be in a better spot than this. And I thought that was going to be his arc. It was like, okay, he's going to be like this for a little bit, then he's going to come back to being like the true badass warrior that Thor is. No! No, he gets fat, out of shape, he fights Thanos at the end, or helps them. But it's not like this true character moment. Like, even when he goes back to see his mom, it is a cool... I like the part in the middle where they're going back to the other movies. It's a good way to kind of recap the whole universe as a whole. It's just like, okay, remember this happened in this movie, this happened in this one. And there's some funny stuff in there, especially with Star-Lord doing his song. They're just sitting there just like, he's still singing his thing, they're just sitting in the background. And I was cracking up at that bit too. I thought that was pretty funny. That part is fun. That one, that's where the movie really started to pick up for me. Because that first hour, I was like, oh god, can we just get to the quantum realm stuff already? I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to. Then once they get into the quantum realm, it's kind of fun how they go back to the different movies and stuff. I was enjoying that bit, but Thor, God, Thor is pathetic. Thor, I don't know what happened between him and Hulk. They get demasculated so much. It makes me really kind of miss Thor from the earlier films a lot. I don't like how Thor was just turned into the dude from the Big Lebowski. And yes, Chris Hemsworth is a funny actor. He's got great comedic timing. But this, oh my god, Thor was so amazing. This is the God of Thunder, and they turned him to the dude from Big Lebowski. And now I guess he's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. He takes no responsibility for his people or anything. That was kind of his arc, right? He was just like, okay, Asgard's not just a place, it's about its people. So he's got Asgard there, he completely just pushes them off to the side. After all he went through, he destroyed Asgard to save his people, and now he just doesn't even care. He doesn't take responsibility for being a king or anything like that. He's just like, oh, here, Valkyrie, I know you had your problems, but here, you take over. You're now the king, or I guess the queen of Asgard. I'm just going to go get drunk and party with the Guardians. I'm like, this is Thor's fulfilling character arc? Come on already. Jesus Christ. So yeah, didn't like how they handled Thor. I didn't like how Thanos was in this film. Thanos' presence just isn't there this time around. He's not as strong. He's not as intimidating. He kind of gets his ass handed to him a bit. He's still imposing. He's still a badass. But he's just not... It's not the same Thanos. Obviously, this is Thanos going through time travel and that. And the time travel aspect of this gets kind of confusing. The rules are kind of... I guess the thing is, you can't go back in time to change your past, because then you'd be living out an alternate reality. So I guess there's different doorways within the quantum realm to navigate to different points in time. And I was having a conversation with a bunch of people about the time travel in this film. They're like, oh no, it's perfectly explained in the movie. I'm like, yeah, but then it doesn't make sense here. It's like, the Ancient One's just like, okay, so you pull this out, the Infinity Stone out of this time thread, but then this creates like this time thread. But then he's like, no, we gotta go back, and then this time thread is fixed. But then again, just confuses me, because there's the part, even at the end of the movie, where Captain America goes back in time to live his life. He's just sitting there on the bench from when they sent him back, and I'm like, okay, did he just live and interact with it? No, he would have been living in an alternate time, a parallel timeline that goes concurrently with this one. Unless he goes through a quantum realm machine to get back to the original timeline, he would still be living up that parallel timeline. They said that, I'm like, okay, he must be living a different timeline. But no, they say that he's in this current timeline. But wouldn't everybody around them just be like, wouldn't things have changed? I don't understand time travel, because they explain you can't go back and change things. However, we've seen in other movies, with Doctor Strange in particular, when he's got the time stone, he can reverse time, he can put it in a time loop, he can change things. So you can go back and change time, but you can't go back and change the current timeline via time travel. You gotta have the time stone to do, and the time travel is confusing as hell. And then again, time travel in a lot of movies gets quite confused. But the rules of this one just kind of irks me a bit. I don't understand how Captain America was there at the end and how it all kind of merged together. If somebody wants to fully explain to me in the comments section how that works, please, by all means, explain it. Because when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, he should have never come back in general. Or why didn't he just bring Peggy Carter back to the present? Then he can live out his life with his friends on the current timeline and Peggy Carter. He can live a happy life. He'd be like, look, come with me if you want to experience this. Because let's face it, you can't go back and change your past. Then you would already live this timeline, but now you're living in my timeline and in the future and blah, 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 blah. It's just, time travel just, oh my god, it gets so confusing when you think of time travel. What else can we talk about? The emotional payoff with Iron Man. Iron Man's death was perfectly satisfying. I'm glad that Tony Stark was the one who got to He's the one who started the universe, and he's the one who kind of like saves it in the end. That was badass. That was a great emotional payoff scene. That's the only one. That's the only death I got emotional. Black Widow. It kind of caught me off guard that they ended up having her sacrifice herself for the Soul Stone. But then again, she's got her movie coming out. How is this going to work? They don't really explain. Because Captain America has to go back and put the stones back. So how is he going to put back the Soul Stone? Is that how Natasha Romanoff's going to come back? Is because they use it and then they bring her back through that way? I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. About how I can understand how he returns the other stones, but the Soul Stone, that one's different. So maybe that's how they bring Black Widow back. I'm pretty sure that's how they're going to do it. But then again, shouldn't she have been sitting there with Captain America at the end? I don't know. Another thing too, like the Ancient One talks about how the Time Stone, if a stone's removed from that, it like damages their reality. But then again, their reality would be saved if one of the stones was removed. Because think about it. If you take away one Infinity Stone from one of the different realities, Thanos can't snap his fingers and wipe out half the universe. Huh? Anybody else think of that? Yeah, because then Thanos wouldn't be doing this stuff. I don't know. It gets confusing. Time travel in movies is it's an overly complicated mess. So you can either go to the thing where it's like a paradoxical, like Back to the Future. You do kind of like the linear time theory. There's just... Yeah, the time travel stuff, when you get to that, I'm just like, okay, this is just not really adding up for me. Okay, where are we at? Badass moments we'll get to. Captain America wielding Mjolnir is one of the coolest moments. It's my favorite part of the movie is when Captain America wields Thor's hammer, because he just comes in and then he stands alone against Thanos, and then everybody comes in slowly. I thought that was amazing. I thought that was my favorite part of the entire movie. It was just that moment where you see Captain America come in there, he wields Mjolnir, and Thor's like, I knew it. And we all knew it. We all knew Captain America was the most worthy of the Avengers. Then he wields it, and then he goes toe-to-toe with Thanos along with Thor. That was badass. That was incredible. Just seeing him come in there, and then Captain America's got the shield, and that Thanos is just kind of knocked out. Everybody's knocked down Iron Man, he's knocked down Thor, and then Captain America just gets up, stands one man against him, and then all of a sudden he just puts the shield, he tightens it up, and he's like, okay, I'm ready to go toe-to-toe with you, Thanos. And he's just the one man walking towards him in Thanos' entire army. And then you hear Sam on the comms, and you see the whole team come in together. It's such a triumphant moment. It's like, yeah, the Avengers, everyone's back. And then Thanos is like, oh, shit. So then we get this final battle in this war. The action sequences are really good here. I think the fights in Infinity War are better. I like the fight in Wakanda more. I think maybe it has to do with the lighting in that too. They have the one on Titan. We got more creativity with the action sequences. This one kind of becomes like a football game where it's like, oh, pass it here, pass it here, pass it here, pass it here. Where all the Avengers in there are just passing it around as Thanos is trying to get to it with the gauntlet. Even Spider-Man gets it, and then Captain Marvel shows up and does her thing. There is one moment where Spider-Man's like, how are you guys going to get through it? And it's like, don't worry, we'll find a way. Then all the female heroes are on one particular spot. And I understand they're just doing that to have their badass moment, but I'm like, where is every other hero? Did they all just have like specific gender groups? Did the Avengers go like, okay, girls, you're all going to be in this one exact spot here. We're all going to be over here fighting our battles, but you get this one exact spot just so you can all just walk in a line and just run through this spot. I don't know. You all just happen to be in the exact spot at the same time. It was fine in Infinity War, and it was okay. Black Widow, and then Scarlet Witch, all of them together, like that made sense. Like, okay, it's not every single specific female hero in just one spot. No, it's just all of them just randomly just happen to be in this exact spot. I'm like, are you just all just in one spot? You not want to fight over there? Did all the other guys just disappear? I don't know. To me, it was just like, okay, come on. I know what you're doing, but come on. I mean, there's no other heroes around at that time. Give me a break. But still, there's still some cool stuff there. I don't know. That just felt to me like it was just one of those moments like, okay, here's our girl power moment of the movie. But I'm like, you've already shown that the women of the movie are powerful. I mean, I don't know what I'm getting at. Let's just forget it. I don't know. That just felt to me like, okay, yeah, that was just, they just wanted to have that shot in there. So it feel like it wouldn't really happen. If you're watching a battle, like everything just kind of stops around them. I don't know. That just felt to me like they just want to have their girl power moment of the movie. Even though you've already shown that they're powerful by throughout it, like Black Widow, Scarlet Witch, and everyone throughout it. But I don't know. I guess they just want to have that one moment. But anyway, so they have that bit. Thanos is over there beating the shit out of people. Captain Marvel is coming in there fighting him. She seems to be more powerful than him, but Thanos gets the Power Stone and punches her and knocks her back. Then all of a sudden, Doctor Strange looks at Iron Man. He does a little signal like this is the one moment. Tony Stark and him are fighting over the gauntlet. Thanos thinks he has it. Iron Man has it on his hands, and he's just like, and Thanos is like, and I am inevitable. Huh? What the hell? Then Iron Man just looks at him, he's like, and I am Iron Man. Snaps his fingers, like, that's the perfect line for him to say. And he snaps his fingers, Thanos' entire army disappears, and so does Thanos. Tony Stark effectively saves the universe. However, the toll of holding all those Infinity Stones at once has taken too much of his body, like of a toll on his body. And then he's just, lies back there. Spider-Man's really like, Mr. Stark, we did it. Mr. Stark, we did it. And then Pepper Potts comes in and she's like, it's okay, Tony. You can rest. And then Tony Stark finally passes away. And it is really sad seeing Tony Stark go because, this whole universe wouldn't exist without Robert Downey Jr. and the epicness of the first Iron Man. He's the one who built this thing from scratch. This is the movie right here, Iron Man. It's the one that built the entire MCU. Without it, we wouldn't have had any of this. So it was effective that he was the one to do so. And everybody knows this whole universe exists primarily because of him. Without Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Tony Stark, that first Iron Man movie wouldn't have been what it was. So he passes away. They all have his funeral. It's really sad and emotional. And then we have that little thing call back to the first movie. It's like proof that Tony Stark has a heart. I'm like, oh, man. And then, he's got his daughter there. You got everybody just moving on forward. Captain America goes back in time to replace all of the Infinity Stones, put them back where they were. Although Loki had one in one of the timelines and disappeared. I guess he's going to be alive somewhere else. But then there'd be two Lokis. I don't know how it works. But anyways, so he does that. And where am I at? But then again, that time, I don't know, fucking time travel. So Captain America goes back in time to have his dance and live his life with Peggy Carter. Of course, they can always de-age him or something like that if they ever wanted to bring him back. They've already shown that and when they were doing that with Scott Lang and Ant-Man. So yes, the MCU has jumped 5 years forward. I guess all the people in the snap who came back are just there, but they're 5 years younger than everyone else. I guess just all the entire cast of Homecoming. I don't know how the time snaps going to work per se. So everyone who's still in the current timeline, everyone who was disappeared before 5 years ago is brought back or whatever. So, and then in terms of post-credit sequences, there's nothing. There were people booing in my theater. I don't know if anybody else had the same thing when nothing popped up. People were booing, but that's just me. So overall, okay, I've been talking for almost 30 minutes. Avengers Endgame, it didn't satisfy me as much as Infinity War. There are a lot of things I liked about it. Some of the humor just felt awkward and out of place, especially towards the middle. Just some of the lines that Captain America would say, like, oh, I've got a great ass right here. I'm like, that just didn't feel right hearing that out of Captain America's mouth. Thanos is underwhelming this time around. He doesn't even really feel like, you don't really feel his presence this time around. The plot, it's not as simple or straightforward as Infinity War was, where it's just like, okay, Thanos needs the stones to wipe out half the universe. This one's like, oh, we gotta go back in time, we gotta hold these stones here, we can't have them at the same time and all this. I don't know, it didn't flow as well. It wasn't properly balanced as much as Infinity War, but, Marvel's had 22 films. If they want to take their time to get this one done in 3 hours, they've earned the right to do so. I just didn't really love it as much as Infinity War, or a lot of the other MCU films. I think this is the weakest film that the Russo brothers have done. I was much more emotionally invested in Infinity War. I was more so in Winter Soldier. I enjoyed more. I enjoyed Civil War more. I just think this is the weakest of the Russo brothers films. But it just, if you want to get to the awesome stuff, I feel like you have to sit through a lot. But for a lot of people, it's worth it. I know a lot of people are really digging this film. I'm just more mixed on it, per se, but still in the positive because of the awesome things that are in it. But there's other things that just bother me, so. Alright, I feel like I've rambled on long enough. This video is about a half hour long at this point. So, if you've seen it, let me know your thoughts down below of what you think of Avengers Endgame. I feel like the MCU should take a rest after this. And with that said, that's it for the Marvel videos. I've done rewatches on the entire franchise. Actually going to be starting up, I think tomorrow, is another franchise that will be done for the rewatches in time for the next big film in that series. So stay tuned for that. go check out Avengers Endgame. Let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below, where we can, talk about this whole movie franchise as a whole going forward. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Comment, like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. And until next time, thank you to the MCU for crafting something that's never really been done before on this scale. And thank you to the original Avengers. Thank you, Robert Downey Jr., for all you did for the MCU. It was a lot of fun going back and watching these things. And it was, in some ways, some of them don't hold up per se, but a lot of them do. And there's a lot that I liked more this time around. But there's a lot, I'm just like, okay, this one's not that great. But Endgame, it does have a lot of the emotions there. And I'm glad I saw it. I just felt like really strange leaving the theater after it. I didn't come away just like, wow, that was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen, like I did with Infinity War. So maybe over time I'll like it more. But until then, I'm more mixed to positive. So I don't hate it. I don't think it's a terrible film, but mixed to positive. So it's not quite the home run I was hoping for to end this Infinity Saga, but there are some good things to be had in it. So with that said, let me know what you thought of it, and comment, like, subscribe, and stay tuned next time as we talk about some other videos on this channel. All right, that's going to be it. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for watching. The Avengers videos are done. No more. Thank you, Iron Man. Thank you, Captain America. Where are we at here? Let me just grab all the movies really quick. Thank you, Ant-Man, for being you. Do I have Thor? Fuck you, Iron Man 2. You suck. Guardians, you're cool. Although, Thor, I'm sorry what they did to you. Black Panther, you're still cool. And you're still the best. Still the best Marvel movies, Infinity War. Alright, that's it. No more. Bye-bye.